Hey, welcome to episode 29 of Scar Bearers. I'm Chris.Gordon. It is fantastic to have you here with me today. And as always, providing that wonderful theme music is Nate Beran. If you want your own theme song, you can reach out to him at Nate Beran. I've checked. I still don't have any funny, weird, or interesting reviews to read on the air here. So I'm just going to tell you about my new link at Linktree, where you can find all of my different social media accounts, my Facebook, Instagram. I don't know why I couldn't think of it just now. LinkedIn, YouTube, the podcast, of course. And that's at linktr.ee/ChrisDTGordon. Today, I talk with my new friend, David Hollingsworth, a regular suburban dad who survived a motorcycle accident that could have left him paralyzed, and he's gone on to run a few marathons and even up the Empire State Building. State building. There's not more than one of those buildings. And I have to say, I'm rather jealous. I'd like to do that, but I just don't want to go to New York City. It's really big for me. Maybe one day, though, I'll put on my big boy pants and get out there. So today's sponsor is being an 80s kid with kids of your own. Being an 80s kid with kids of your own. Now having a second childhood is totally understandable. Look at these guys, Optimus and Megatron, at it again, but with better articulation. All right. I hope you enjoy my conversation with David.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Scar Bearers. I'm Chris.Gordon. It's so great to have you here today. I'm joined by my new friend, David Hollingsworth. How are you, David?
I'm doing fantastic. Hope you're doing the same.
I am indeed. Now, David, you and I are connected because we've gone through some life-changing events, and we've both used running to use as part of our recovery. However, your injury is a lot more tough sounding than mine. It's a lot more manly than mine. Whereas mine is, I scratched my hand. I'm going to let you tell your story, and so maybe people can make up their minds for themselves.
Sure. This is in 2004. I was learning how to ride a motorcycle. And before you make it sound too manly, this was a Honda Rebel 250. So one of the smaller, it wasn't a Harley, it was a tiny bike. And I was learning to ride in an elementary school parking lot. And as I was going back and forth, one of the things they have you do is to accelerate and then hit the clutch and brake at the same time so that you can stop quickly, because you need to learn how to stop quickly. When I was going across the parking lot, I hit a patch of sand and lost my balance for a moment. And when you lose your balance, you tend to grab on whatever's closest to you, which happens to be, if you're right-handed, that happens to be the throttle.
Okay.
I hit the throttle and the bike shot forward. Before I could get on the clutch and the brake, the bike hit the curb. I bounced off the bike and landed with my back on the corner of the curb.
Oh.
And according to the ER report, it's an explosive burst fracture of the L2 vertebra on 3 axes with 60% compression of the spinal canal.
Oh, wow.
Somebody happened to be walking by and saw the accident, called the paramedics, and they came in, put me in a cervical collar and a backboard, and got me to the hospital. And they had to stabilize me for 2 days before surgery. Initially, my right leg was paralyzed. And before they put me under for the surgery, the doctor said, I don't know if you're going to walk again. And after a 7.5 hour surgery, I was in critical care for 10 days and then a rehab hospital for 2.5 months, where by the end of that, I had to learn to stand. And by that time I left, I could walk about 10 feet.
Okay. Now, where is this taking place?
This is in the Washington, D.C. area. I live in Herndon, Virginia.
All right.
And it was just in the Northern Virginia suburbs.
Okay. All right.
And
really quick, at first I thought
Sure.
when you said that this is in an elementary school, I was imagining you had like hit a jump rope or a
oh no, no,
dodgeball or something. And so,
no, just in the parking lot, not in the playground.
gotcha. Well, good. Well, so
Yeah.
you went to the rehab center and you were able to stand. So let's go from there.
Sure. Over the next 6 months after I was discharged, I was off work for another 6, and had to wear a TLSO brace, which is basically a plastic clamshell to hold you upright,
Mhm.
like a big turtle, and had to wear that 24 hours a day for 6 months.
Oh, wow.
And eventually, I was able to get rid of that and was able to walk longer distances. And about after a year, they let me get back on a bicycle again. So I could ride a bike and I could walk, but I didn't really get back into running at the time until about 8 years later, when, after being more sedentary, I had gained about 80 pounds
Okay.
and was unhappy with kind of the direction of where things going, and wanted to get back into running because I loved running. I'd already done the New York Marathon in '89 and Marine Corps in '94. So I asked my doctor, can I run? And he said, sure, if somebody's chasing you. So I signed up for a 5K.
All right.
Just to have somebody chasing me.
Yep.
And the first time I went out running, or quote unquote, I jogged about 60 feet.
Yeah.
And that's all I could do at the time. And over the next few months, I went from 60 feet to my first 5K. And then after that, over the next 6 months post that, I went from a 5K to running the Indianapolis half marathon.
Wow.
And I actually had a pretty good pace on that. I can't run it today because, older, but
Yep.
I did like an 8:38 pace for that. So
Nice.
it's 1:53 for that.
Excellent.
And I thought, if I can run a half marathon, why not do the whole thing?
Mm-hmm.
So I signed up for something the following year, and 10 years after the accident, to kind of celebrate the anniversary, in February, I ran up the Empire State Building.
Oh, wow.
I did a rowing competition. I did 2 sprint triathlons. I did a bike ride called the Assault on Mount Mitchell. And before you think that sounds tough, it is actually a very tough ride.
Yeah.
It's 102 miles in 11,000 feet of climbing, all of it at the end.
Oh, wow.
But I am the last official finisher that year.
Okay. Someone's got to be.
And I was happy to be it.
Yep.
And then in November, I ran and finished the Marine Corps Marathon. So,
Hoorah.
yeah, a lot of Marines yell that all the way through.
Yeah, they do.
And when I was interviewed on television prior to the event, the reporter asked me, what was the toughest thing about running a marathon? And I thought back. I mean, I had to look all the way back to the accident and say, okay, what was the toughest thing? And it wasn't learning to walk again. It wasn't adjusting to kind of the new normal. It wasn't training for the marathon, and it wasn't running it. So the hardest thing to do was to get out the door.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Once I did, the rest was easy, and that became the title of the book, because as long as I got off the couch and got going, it was a lot easier to keep going than it was to stop.
Yeah.
So that's the advice I would give anybody, whether it's a physical goal or a educational goal or whatever obstacle they're trying to overcome, is get started, and the rest of it generally takes care of itself, because inertia is hardest to overcome when you're sitting still.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And there are so many different examples of that. A telltale one is the train. Yep. It's hard for a train to get started, but once it does, it keeps going and going. And I know from my own experience that is true, because in my own recovery, getting started was hard, but once I got going, I found that it was a lot easier, once I got ahead of steam. So I totally
and
agree with that.
yeah, and not just for the physical benefits of it, my mental and emotional health improved dramatically once I got in motion. I was never able to think my way into a good mood, but I could sure as heck run or ride my way into one. Because every time I come back, I'd be tired, I'd be worn out. It was like, that was fun.
Yeah.
So I would urge anybody to just get started. And then once they do, the rest of it just kind of happens.
Yeah. And I laugh because once in a while I'll get in the stretch of a couple of days of not running, or, I get so busy with teaching or other things, and I won't work out.
Oh,
My
yeah.
wife will make me run.
Yeah.
She'll say, okay, you're driving me nuts. Get out. And she'll make me run 3 or 4 miles, and she'd be right on the nose. I'll feel a lot better coming back.
Oh yeah. And that's what I would encourage anybody to do is you don't have to be fast. I am living proof of that. You don't have to be good. I'm even more proof of that, but you do have to get out there. And once you do, you will feel a lot better.
Yes. Yeah. And so I want to go back a little bit to that Empire State Run.
Sure.
So how, like, if we were to lay that out on a linear track, on a flat track, how far is that really?
Well, it is just, I'm trying to think how many feet. It's 1,576 steps.
Okay.
It's like 1,100 feet total. And it took me about 20 minutes. So it's like a really hard 5K.
Yeah.
And the funny thing in training for that, there's not a lot of places you can train to run 86 floors.
Yeah.
In fact, I was in a building that had 7 floors, but I could add 2 by going down to the parking garage. And what I would do is I would go do that 3 or 4 times a day and do multiple flights. And I realized that you have to go up, take the elevator down, and go back, because going downstairs is very different than going up.
Yep.
And right before, it was about a week before the event, I broke my toe.
Oh.
And I started WebMDing. How do you deal with a broken toe? And the answer is you tape it to the next one.
Yep.
So I ended up taping my toe, and instead of running, which is how I broke it in the first place, I started hiking it, going 2 steps at a time and pulling myself up.
Okay.
Which is about the same amount of exertion, but not as much impact. And your lungs are burning as you get up there.
Yeah.
But the weirdest thing about that event is that other than the start, you don't see anybody.
Really?
Yeah, they have a mass start for the 20 or 25 elite runners, which I am not. And because it's such a small race, there are only like 500 people are allowed to be in it, because they have to shut down all the tourist traffic to allow that.
Yeah.
And they make so much money on the observation deck tickets, they only allow it to shut it down for 2 hours once a year.
Okay.
So they do the elite runners, do the men's elite, women's elite, and then everybody else, it's every 5 seconds, next guy goes. So I saw people at the start, and I passed a couple, and a couple passed me. But for the next 20 minutes, I didn't see anybody. It was just, you're just kind of huffing and puffing and climbing the stairs. And then all of a sudden you come out the door at the observation deck, and everybody's cheering. And then immediately they shove you on the elevator and send you back down because there's not enough room for everybody to be at the top. So it's a very fun event. If you get to watch any videos of it, it's a hoot, but it's really, really hard to get in. And I got in by raising money for a charity that year.
Okay. Yeah. I was going to ask if it were a lottery system, or, if there's, you have to raise money or whatever it was.
I raised money for the Multiple Myeloma Research Foundation, the MMRF.
Okay.
And I had to raise $2,500 to get in, or I had to pay it out of pocket. Fortunately, between social media and hometown newspapers, and my story was in the Washington Post that year. I was able to raise $5,000, so I didn't have to worry about
Excellent.
forking it over out of my own wallet.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of a hard sell to your wife or whomever. Yeah, I want to spend $2,500 on running up steps.
Yeah, because it was crazy. I had to take the train up to New York from DC and stay overnight in a hotel there. Then we were on Good Morning America that morning prior to the event, and it was a lot of fun. Got to meet a lot of celebrities, and it was a blast.
Well, that's great. That's great. And so you said you also did the Marine Corps Marathon.
Yeah, it was my second Marine Corps. I did the Marine Corps run in '94. So 20 years prior to that. That was the year Oprah Winfrey ran it, and the whole time the Marines are yelling at you, "Oprah's right behind you." Oprah's 20 minutes behind me, even though I was slow. But in 2014, it was a beautiful day to run it. And I was a lot slower than I was 20 years prior.
Yep.
But I did finish. And
excellent.
If you're ever going to run a marathon, it's one of the more enjoyable ones to run, because other than there's some hills at the start, but it's a relatively flat course. And the Marines who put it on are just great support and great cheerleaders for you, and they will make sure that if you're able to finish, they will make sure you do.
Nice. Yeah, I have a long-term goal of qualifying for Boston.
Wow.
And because I'm a pretty good runner at most distances, I am awful at the marathon comparatively. And so I definitely will need all the help I can get, but that's good to know that the Marine Corps one you said it's not that difficult other than a couple hills?
Well, it is a marathon, so it is difficult.
Yeah.
There are hills at the start, and there's some minor climbs, but it is a fairly flat course the whole way.
Okay.
And one of the more enjoyable ones as far as a spectator and participant it's a very friendly crowd.
Okay.
And if you want to run fast, Indianapolis is the one to do. Because that is an entirely flat course the whole way. I think maybe you have 100 feet of elevation over the entire event.
Oh, wow.
So it's like Grandma's in Minnesota or something.
Yeah.
So it's done at a very good time of year, and it's entirely flat.
Okay.
So I've done that one. I did the half and then the full a couple years later. But I've got a special love for Marine Corps because it was the one following the accident.
Yeah, gotcha. It's kind of funny you mentioned Grandma's. I live in Minnesota, and I actually live in a valley. I can't run 2 miles without going up 100 feet of elevation. So thinking there's a marathon that only has that, that's quite enticing.
Yeah, Indianapolis is highly recommended. It's a lot of fun. Again, who knows when they're going to, I don't know if they're doing it this year, because even Boston was done virtually this year.
Yep.
One of my neighbors did Boston virtually a couple weeks ago, and she had pacers with her that would run sections of the course.
Nice.
She had a couple aid stations in the neighborhood, and she had about 6 runners finish the last 3 miles with her. So, and I looked out my door and said, "What are all you people doing here?" She was running the Boston Marathon right outside my house. So
interesting.
It's not quite the same as being in person, because Boston is legendary, especially Heartbreak Hill there at like mile 17, 18.
Yep.
And I'm looking forward to when these events do open back up, because there's a lot of benefit to being out there and running with other people, especially for beginning runners or people who are recovering from something, to get back into running. Having that camaraderie is very helpful.
Yes.
And really makes you feel like that you're part of something.
Yes. Yeah, I totally concur. Really quick, I have a teammate from my Ragnar team last year, she ran a virtual Boston as well.
Sure. Wow.
And so, she had pacers and her own finishing tape. But yeah, I actually ran a couple virtual races this last weekend. I ran a virtual 5K and a virtual 10 mile, the Goldies 10 mile.
Okay.
And I really discovered that it takes an entrepreneurial spirit to do one of these races because you're all by yourself.
Yeah.
If you were to give up and just walk home, nobody would know. Nobody would know. But you.
Yeah, and I found that when I did Mount Mitchell, the bike ride, I tried it in 2008 and only made it to the Blue Ridge Parkway entrance, which is about 82 miles. And it felt really bad because everybody thought I'd finished. And at the time, I didn't tell them I didn't. I had to come clean and say, look, I bailed on this thing.
Yeah.
But so when I did it in 2014, I started cramping around 90 miles. It's only 12 miles to go, but it's all uphill the last 22 miles. So it just gets harder and harder and harder. And I'm having to get off and walk the bike and get back on and cramp. And they keep asking me, do you want to quit? And I'm like, no. And then I say, how many people are behind me? It was like 7. I'm like, not quitting. Then it was 5, then it was 3, then it was 2, and then it was, you're the last guy. And they asked me, do you want to get, they're following me in the van. Do you want to get off the bike? I'm like, no. And by the end, I was like Richard Gere and an officer and a gentleman just crying. I don't want to get off the bike. And within a mile of the finish, I put my foot down and my calf cramped and I fell over. And the park ranger was telling me, you got to get in the car. I'm like, I'm not going to get in the car. Got off and walked the bike a little bit, got back on and finished with like 9 minutes to go before the cutoff.
Okay.
And for everybody else, they like big celebration, big crowd. They give you warm clothes to put on because it's, pretty cool at the top of the mountain. They give you food and a hot coffee or whatever you want to drink. With me, they grabbed my bike, threw my clothes at me, shoved me up on the bus because everybody was done. They were just waiting for me. So I finished last in that event, but I feel like I won because I stuck to it.
That there is something to that. And, it's great to know, you can accomplish something hard and make it through the other side. And you can rely on that when those future endeavors come up. Yeah,
I think I would tell your listeners, you're a lot tougher than you think you are. Because if it's like Dory in Finding Nemo. You just keep going, just keep swimming, and you will get there because the finish line never gets further away.
Yes.
Every step brings you one step closer.
Exactly. Well, do you have any events in the future you'll be taking one step closer to? As I mentioned before the call, I'm recovering from another spinal procedure I just had recently. So I'm slowly getting my strength back in my left leg. Probably the next event will be a bike century. Because I'm able to be on the bike with no problem. And I'm back. I did like 30 miles last weekend. Once I get back up to about 60, 65 or so, I'll sign up for my next century ride. And then hopefully slowly get back into running because I still have the Disney Marathon weekend is still on my bucket list. In 2018, I did 3 of the 4 events, but my IT bands on both legs were just so on fire that I couldn't finish the marathon that weekend. Oh, no.
So it's still on my list. I'm not going to quit yet until I get that one done.
Well, the best of luck to you for that.
Thank you.
Are there any places where people can reach out to you to connect or to learn more about your story?
Sure, absolutely. My website is hollyworks.com. That's HOLLIWORKS.com. And that's also my social media handle. So Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, look for Hollyworks, you'll find me. And I've got a book coming out this fall. It's about that whole journey from the motorcycle accident to the marathon, and really how people can apply those lessons to their life. The book's called Get Out the Door, and it'll be at an Amazon website near you. And if you go to my website and put in your email address, you'll be able to download the first chapter, and you'll be on the list to get the book when it gets released.
Excellent. And when is that going to be?
That's going to be this fall. We're still setting the date, but it will be before the holidays.
Excellent. Well, they'll make a great stocking stuffer.
Yep, absolutely.
And the question that my audience loves to hear the answer to, what is your favorite dinosaur?
That is a darn good question. It's got to be Velociraptor. You know, that was my favorite one in Jurassic Park. Oh, no, I'm going to change my mind. Dilophosaurus. Do you know why?
As memory serves, that's the one that got Newman.
From
correct?
Seinfeld, absolutely. You've got the answer right. So that's why it's my favorite, because he ruined it for everybody else.
You know, he did, that selfish guy. He got what he deserved.
Yep.
So, excellent. Well, David, it's been an honor and a privilege to talk with you, sir. Thank you very much for your time, and please have a great day.
You too, and tell your listeners, get out the door. Once you do, the rest is easy.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with David. If you want to reach out to him, you can find him at his website, hollyworks.com. And also you can find him on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn at Hollyworks. If you want to check out what I'm doing in the world of speaking and podcasting and YouTubing, again, just go to linktr.ee/chrisdtgordon. As always, please like, subscribe, share this episode and other episodes. It really helps me get my message out and to help others with some inspiring and hopefully entertaining content. I greatly appreciate all the feedback and support you've given me so far, and hope you continue to do the same. All right. Thanks, everyone. Please have a great day, and remember to pass on perfection and go for greatness.